We beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trust in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Item number 2, the confirmation of minutes. Senator John White.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of the meetings of Friday, November 3rd and Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 be taken as read.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of Friday, November 3rd and Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 be confirmed.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes are confirmed. Thank you, Senator John White. Item number 3, messages. Mrs. Beal?
No messages, Madam President.
Thank you, Mrs. Beal. Item number 4, reports of committees. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. Senators, we have apologies from Senator Dr. Emily Gail Dill and Senator Leslie Robinson, who have given apologies for their absence today. The first item under announcements then is in the name of the Honorable Owen Darrell, spokesperson for the Cabinet and Minister and Government Leader in the Senate. You have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the Office of Project Management and Procurement Annual Report for year 2022.
Thank you. And there's a second announcement, and that is in the name of Senator Lindsay Simmons, Junior Minister for Home Affairs. Senator Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the annual report of the Registrar General for the year ending 31st of December 2022. Senators may access copies of the report on their tablets and or the Parliament website.
Thank you, Senator Simmons. And the third announcement is in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister for Health. Senator Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the Bermuda Health Council Combined Annual Report for the fiscal years ended 2021 and 2022.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Item number 6, motions, notices of motions, and I think we have one, and that Senator Ariana Hudson will present. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the consideration of Senate the proposed agreement for the sale between Guardian Izetta Gibbons and the government of Bermuda regarding all that southernmost strip of land to be subdivided from property situated 18 Secretary Lane, St. George's, GO5. In accordance with the provisions of Section 21A of the Acquisition of Land Act 1970, and I give notice that at the next day of meeting, I will move the said sale agreement be approved.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Item number 7, petitions. There are none. Item number 8, statements. We have one statement that's in the name of the Minister, Owen Darrell, spokesperson for the Cabinet. You have the floor.
I have a statement.
That's what we were told you have a statement. Do you have a statement, Minister?
We can defer to the second statement first, please, Madam President.
Certainly, this second statement is nurturing our nation, yes, and your parenting expo. So you have the floor. Does he have them both? All right. Senators, we will have the second statement read at this time, and that's in the name of the of Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Youth, Social Development, and Seniors. Senator Simmons, you can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, on Friday, November 10th, the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors held a second annual Nurturing Our Nation Parent Expo. This morning, I rise to share with the members of the Senate the success of the Expo and the opportunities this event presents to our parents, guardians, and members of the public to have access to valuable information and gain awareness of the support services, programs, and activities that are specifically available for our children and families within the community. Sorry. Madam President, let me share that a key initiative for introducing the annual Parent Expo resulted from the data gathered annually by the Department of Child and Family Services, DCFS, using family strengths and needs assessments on all families engaged in intervention services with the department. We all know that data tells stories. The data collected from the assessments conducted support the fact that two of the highest priorities area for most caregivers, that is our parents and guardians, are the need for greater support in coping skills and parenting skills. Madam President, knowing that our parents were seeking greater assistance in these areas, pushed the drive to find ways to ensure primary child caregivers are given the support and tools through the promotion and awareness of many services available within the community. The Parenting Expo was held on the front lawn of City Hall and brought together in one centrally located space the diversity of services offered that assisted parents and guardians in developing coping mechanisms and enhancing parenting skills to nurturing our children. Madam President, in addition to the Parenting Expo this month, the ministry will be highlighting on all of its social media platforms the live stream panel discussions held last year with industry professionals, which covered a broad range of topics that were of interest to our parents. These included personal care and wellness, effects of bullying and domestic violence on children, nutrition and meal planning, boundary setting for your child, and co-parenting and nurturing parents. Also, last year, the ministry intentionally introduced parenting tips each month that were promoted on the ministry's social media platform. These tips will continue to be highlighted for the remainder of this year and throughout 2024. Madam President, the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors, inclusive of the Department of Child and Family Services, is committed to providing alternative ways to promote and raise awareness for parents and guardians so that they are equipped with practical solutions and resources to raise happy and confident children. Madam President, the Parent Expo takes a holistic approach in ensuring that the services promoted are diverse as we understand that not all parents experience the same with their children. This year, there were 18 representative services and programs in the Parenting Expo that reflected a cross-section of government ministries and departments, the third sector, community agencies, and organizations that offer support to children and families in the form of community programs, child development support and services, mental health support and services, parent support, education support, and extracurricular activities. The various entities included Bermuda Artery, Be Smart, the Child Development Program, Department of Education, Early Childhood Education, Preschool Awareness and Registration, Department of Education, Middle School Awareness and Registration, the Coalition for the Protection of Children, the Department of Child and Family Services, Endeavor, the Family Center, Emotions School of Dance, the Ministry of Education, Education Reform Unit, the Mirrors Program, Mayfair Wellness, Tomorrow's Voices, WinReach, Women Resource Center, Department of Health, Child Care Regulation Program, Department of Health, Oral Health. Information pamphlets were also distributed on behalf of the Bermuda National Library Youth Services. Madam President, each participant had a booth-style display that allowed attendants to interact and engage, gather pamphlets, and enjoy giveaways. Many of the participants provided play areas, games, and live demonstrations to create a fun-filled, interactive, and information environment as a representative from each participating organization made brief speeches emphasizing the services, programs, and/or activities that they offered for parents and children. Madam President, our public schools were on break on that day, but parents and children attended the Parenting Expo and experienced a fun but informative afternoon. The feedback from participants and attendants have been very encouraging, underscoring the appreciation for the importance of having the Parent Expo annually. I look forward to the third annual Parenting Expo in 2024. Madam President, I encourage any organization that provides services, support, or extracurricular activities for children and families who would like to know more about the Parenting Expo and potentially participate next year to contact the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors on 444-2466. That's 444-2466. Be a part of this annual event as we work together to strengthen our families. Madam President, I take this opportunity to thank all the participants and persons who attended the second annual Parenting Expo. The Mayor of the City of Hamilton, the Town Crier, the staff at the Corporation of Hamilton, members of the organizing committee, specifically all the members of the Parenting Expo planning team who worked diligently despite the challenges they faced to communicate without computers and emails in some instances to make this expo a success. I appreciate their continued and commitment to children. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Simmons. We will now have the second statement that's in the name of Minister Owen Darrell, spokesperson for the Cabinet Office.
Madam President, today I lay the 2022 annual report of the Office of Project Management and Procurement as prescribed by Article 32E of the Public Treasury Administration and Payments 1969 Act. Madam President, this report highlights the office's business units, its performance throughout the year, and the implementation of its mandate. It also provides information demonstrating ongoing work in maintaining fiscal responsibility by closely monitoring expenditures, projects, and procurement activities. Madam President, the report highlights some significant results achieved during this reporting period, which include the following. The office organization chart and management structure has changed. Statistical data showing the number of hits made to the procurement notice and awards web page to gauge online activity. Report indicating no change in the number of waiver requests reviewed, but the dollar value of waivers increased. Improved governance and management of client case files, increased number of compliance reviews on contract award recommendation. The office recorded a reduction in the number of complaints, increased use of RFX drafter application and number of users, increased project and procurement training sessions to build capacity and skills for internal and external users, reduced the time it takes to perform assessments highlighted, increased advice and guidance cases related to projects and procurement strategy planning and implementation, improved compliance, audit, review approach, implementation of new internal policies, procedures, guidance notes, and enhanced monitoring and control of budget expenditure with improved administrative practices. Madam President, the team continues to work towards improving the quality of the internal customer experience by having more face-to-face interactions, being the centralized point of contact for project and procurement related information, and encouraging the internal customers to learn more about project management and procurement activities, and by them using the appropriate methods and means improved in their overall delivery performance. The team also used their feedback to enhance the general project management and procurement delivery processes, practices, and policies. The team used this feedback and updated the waiver and evaluation matrix forms and instructions, updated the code of practice and project management training slides, and developed good practices instruction sheet for users. Additionally, Madam President, during this reporting period, the office underwent an organizational review by management service consulting team. The outcome of this assessment indicated that certain changes were required to realize improved efficiency and optimize the framework to ensure current and projected demands could be met. 2 new posts were added to the department's chat, and new job descriptions were created to add to the office's capacity to respond more effectively across ministries in the matters of public procurement. Madam President, the department also undertook the revamping of all existing job descriptions to ensure they captured the new structure. These new descriptions support the good governance, project and procurement case management functions and responsibilities of the office and provide a professional and high-quality level of delivery. It is pleasing to report that during this submission period, a full-time director was appointed for the first time. Additionally, recruitment could not be realized due to budget constraints. However, it is expected that with the expansion will occur during the next reporting period. Madam President, the department continues to provide project and procurement oversight, advisory services, and guidance to public officers. There was a continued increase in demand for support from various levels of management and administration this year, and the office was able to assist in maintaining efficiencies and effective service delivery across ministries. Improved awareness of processes and procedures has lessened the risk of noncompliance and increased efficiencies for fiscal activities. Madam President, the last point of note is that the ministry would like to take this opportunity to thank the Office of Project Management and Procurement team for consistently delivering its specific mandate, goals, and objectives. We also appreciate the public officers and their partners for their outstanding efforts and dedication in supporting and implementing the work to ensure that value for money is obtained and the code of practice for project management and procurement principles are continually upheld. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrow. Item number 9, introduction of bills. There are none. Item number 10, first reading of public bills. The following public bill has been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and is hereby read for the first time. Its title is the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023. And Senators, this bill will be taken up on the orders of the day later in our agenda. Item number 11, the first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, question and question period. Senators, we will entertain questions on the statement that was given first, and that is Nurturing Our Nation, the annual parenting expo that was presented by Senator Lindsey Simmons. Would any senator care to ask questions? Yes. Senator, you have the floor. Senator Tucker, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to you, Madam President, to the Senate, to our Senate colleagues, and to the listening audience. I have 3 questions for the junior minister, who thanks to her, who has brought this statement to us today. If I may, I would just put the 3 questions out there, one after the other, or would you prefer that I just ask one and allow her to answer? Okay, great. All right, so my first question is, if on page 2 of the statement, the second paragraph from the bottom, it does mention that the parenting tips each month are promoted on the ministry's social media platform. My question is whether there are any initiatives that the ministry is thinking about to be able to get the information, get the tips to the parents and caregivers who are not on social media, because while most people are, but there are people who are not. So that would be the first question. The second question is, I would like to know if the ministry is noticing any specific trends that are indicating that an increase in attendees are engaging in the process. So I believe that this expo is a great initiative. I think that there's a lot from the public to be gleaned from attending. But I'm also aware that people sometimes will go, they'll, just kind of mill around, pick up a few leaflets that end up going home in the garbage, and then that's the end of that until the next event. So I'm just wondering if the ministry is noticing any specific trends that's indicating that more people are attending the expo. And then my third question is whether there are any participating services. The junior minister did read out a number of entities that are engaged in this process, which is fantastic. I would like to know if any of these participating services are seeing an increase in the demand for their services, and particularly resulting from people taking advantage of attending the expo. So thank you. Those are my three questions, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. While the senator is obtaining answers.
Madam President, to answer the first question, last year and this year will be mailed out the parenting tips to households around Bermuda. Madam President, this year there was an increase. That's to answer question number 2. And question number 3, as I said in my statement, we do collect valuable data from each entity that participates. So we collect the data. I don't have the data in front of me, but I'm sure that they collected data this year that we'll be able to let you know what the data is in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tucker, do you have a
Um,
supplement?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I do. I have a question about the response to question 3, but I'll leave that one alone for a minute for now. But my question, as it relates to my supplemental question, on the answer for the second question, which the junior minister did say that they have seen an increase. I'd be interested to know how they're tracking the data. Thank you, Madam President.
While the senator is obtaining an answer to that supplemental question, would any other senator care to ask any questions on this statement? Yes, Senator Robinson,
I could answer that one real
please
fast.
do.
They're collecting the data from the participants. So the participants do give information, and again, it was an increased number of attendees to this year.
Thank you, Senators. You have a second supplemental?
Yes, Madam President,
Senator
thank you.
Tucker, carry on.
Thank you. Thank you to the junior minister for answering that question. I'd be interested to know sort of what the number, how the increase is reflected from last year to this year. If she's able to tell us that information, that would be very helpful. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. So Senator Robinson, do you want to? Okay, fine. No, that's. Yes, she will entertain your question.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the junior minister for her presentation. I just have one question, really, and it's about the work-life balance that I find a lot of parents are struggling with right now. Did this expo yield any potential policy changes from the government in supporting parents when it comes to parental leave or various things? Because right now, the fathers, they get 5 days, and that's not really enough to support your wife, especially if she's going through postpartum, and I shouldn't say wife, partner, if they're going through postpartum or whatever. So I just wondered if the government may look at, from this data that they've collected, revisiting that, and also introducing other policies that may assist parents with being able to balance the increased workload and being active in their children's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Robinson.
I just need clarification, um, that, from Senator Robinson, Senator Tucker. Did you mean, what was the increase from last year to this year in reference to the attendees or the participants?
Senator Tucker?
Thank you, Madam President. It is the number of attendees. Thank you, Madam President.
So, to answer Senator Robinson's question, the expo is for providing information to the attendees. So if they have questions, comments, or concerns, we have people from all sectors that are willing to help parents. Thank you. And when it comes to the policies, we would get back to you in regards to that as well. If the increase in attendance, they have people that are there that monitor who were there last year and this year, so that they do know that it was definitely an increase this year.
Senator Simmons, are you saying that you will respond to Senator Robinson's question later, or that was the answer you were giving?
If he needs more clarification, I could get some more information, but I answered most of his question. But if he needs any more clarification, I could get a response from the minister.
All right, Senator Robinson is happy with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Simmons, and thank you all senators. We will now move on to the second statement that was read by Minister Darrow, and that is the project management and procurement. Would any senator care to ask questions on that statement that was given? Yes, Senator Jakuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to thank the minister for bringing this statement to us. We're certainly heartened to see a strengthening of the project management function. Clearly, anything that's going to improve the efficiency of the people's money being spent is welcomed by the One Bermuda Alliance. I do have a question. On page 2, it the statement refers to compliance reviews, and I know the report mentions 3 breaches of the project management code that came out of those reviews. And if the minister could tell us what those 3 breaches were, we'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Madam
Thank you,
President.
Senator Jakuto. Yes, Minister Darrow.
Thank you, Madam President. As there is a slight delay, I am just waiting the responses of technical officers,
Mhm.
as that is a very specific question, and I wish to get the
Yeah,
wholesome response for the senator. So if you
but
can
with any other
bear with
senator-
me for one moment while the response is being garnished.
Mhm.
Garnished.
Sorry, Senator Tucker, I believe you have a question on this statement. You can pose your question.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. My question also comes from page 2. I think it's always a good thing when efficiencies can be realized. I'm just curious to know if the minister can tell us what, because it's been recorded, the statement mentions that there has been a recorded reduction in the number of complaints. I'd be interested to know sort of what the top maybe 2 or 3 complaints were that they've been able to, achieve an efficiency and contribute to reducing the number. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Oh,
Just so I understand the question. So you're asking, due to the reduction, what complaints are we not seeing anymore?
Madam President, I would like to know because the number of complaints have been reduced.
Mhm.
I'm just interested to know the types of complaints, the key, maybe 1 or 2 types of complaints, what sort of categories they would be in that have contributed to this reduction. So I appreciate that there is a myriad of complaints that come in. I'm just wondering if the minister is able to sort of give us sort of categories of, these are the key types of complaints. Let's say, by way of example, somebody may say, okay, well, the response times have been, very long and they've been improved. So that may apply in various different situations. So I'm just wondering if he's able to give any information like that so we can get an appreciation of the number of complaints where they sort of fall, and appreciate the reduction a little bit better. I don't know if that's a little bit clearer. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
All right. I'll try to answer that the best I can. I am getting some responses that are coming through. Um, Madam President, let's go into the next set of questions, please, if I may. I will get these back to you. I am getting responses, but
You're getting.
I don't think it will do any justice to the senators for me to answer what I have here.
Mhm.
So if you can give them a few more moments to craft the response,
Mhm.
I will deliver it the best I can.
To
But
Senator
it's not going
Tucker's-
to give anyone any justice right now.
Okay, so
at
that
this
includes Senator DeCouto's questions about the 3 breaches?
It includes that.
Yes, all
like I
right,
said, I
fine.
am getting responses.
Yes, all right.
But I've asked for a bit more clarity for my sake,
Yes.
so I can then pass it on to the senators.
Fine.
I'm
Is
sure they will
understood.
appreciate that.
Would any other senator care to ask questions then? Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the minister for his presentation. Just one question about, the revamp and the organizational chart changing and the job descriptions also changing. Would there be something additional to, because I know that most of these descriptions are placed on government website,
Mhm.
but they're not always, updated right away. Will there be a place where folks can kind of view, or maybe if a report, that sort of assessment report that was done by the consultant team may be tabled, or maybe a brief paper tabled about what new direction and what these new posts are and what this new particular full-time director was appointed for, just to give a bit of backdrop on the specific changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Robinson.
Thank you. I think those answers can actually be found in the report. So have a read of the report, and I think you'll find those responses for that as to far as the reorg. Remember, this statement is about the report that was tabled. Yeah, Madam President, I will undertake to get these back to the senators shortly. Can I ask that we go to the next order of business? And then I will double back to this.
Certainly we will. Senators, this minister has requested that we come back to this, and so therefore we will continue with the with our agenda regarding questions.
Madam President, I
yes.
beg your pardon. Before you move forward, may I ask a second question, please?
Certainly you may.
Thank you. On page 4, there is mention of additional recruitment couldn't be realized due to budget constraints. And it also mentions, that there will be an additional expansion in the next reporting period. I'm just curious to know how many additional positions is the department looking at recruiting? Thank you, Madam President. And also if he can sort of give the level, because they've just hired a director. So, sort of what categories those positions fall in. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker, Opposition Leader. The minister has requested that we move on with and so we have a series of questions that were asked for oral responses to parliamentary questions from Senator Dwayne Robinson, and I will turn over to the minister with regard to the questions, the 3 questions that were asked by Senator Dwayne Robinson. So, Minister. This had to do with the anti-doping.
Oh, we're going to start
energy.
there.
Yes. Minister, when you're ready, you can respond.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, if I may, ask that in response to these questions that were posed on November 22nd by Senator Dwayne Robinson, I will ask that Standing Order 65 4D that states that a debate that is currently sitting, that standing order be put in place and adhered to regarding these questions. Also, there's another standing order that I would like to cite in response to these questions. That is Standing Order 65 4K, which talks about these questions are already in the public domain and can be referenced on Hansard from a debate that was held on this very topic in another place last week, Friday. So, Madam President, I will request that these questions not be read in accordance with those standing orders.
Senators, you understand that the minister has indicated the questions that were put forward by Senator Dwayne Robinson, that because we are going to be debating this bill, those questions can be asked during the debate of the bill, which we would do on orders of the day today. And then the second question, series of questions that were asked by Senator DeCuto, the minister has indicated that those are in the responses to those questions are in the public domain.
Madam President,
Senator DeCuto?
if I make a comment, to be frank, I disagree with the senator's view on
The
that.
Ministers. Yes.
Sorry, excuse me. I apologize. I disagree with the minister's view on that, and I happen to know that there's quite a large demand from the public for the answers to these questions, such as,
Whoa, Madam President. First of all, I don't even know which he's referring to. Are we still on the water questions?
No, he didn't ask questions
Or
on.
he's talking about the questions,
questions
that he sent in. Well, Madam President, I haven't even gotten to that one yet. I'm still on the water one. And if we've ruled on the first set of water questions, I will go on to the second set of questions, if you may. I haven't even gotten there yet.
The ruling on the first set of questions that were presented by Senator Dwayne Robinson for oral answers today, and that has to do with the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA. The minister has indicated that we are debating the bill today, and those questions or queries can be taken up during the debate on the orders of the day when we get to the orders of the day. So that is a decision that has been given by the minister, and I support that decision.
Thank you,
Those
Madam President.
questions. We will now move on then to the questions that had been submitted for oral answers by Senator Douglas DeCuto, and the minister can now respond to that.
And thank you, Madam President. As the senator will know, that there's been many statements made by this, and he will also know that there's an active investigation that is still current and active regarding these questions that the senator has asked. So I would ask that Order 65, Standing Order 65-4F, that these matters are secret, be put in place in regards to these questions, Madam President, as to not hinder or interfere with any active investigation. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister. Senator DeCuto, the minister has given his ruling on that. It's an active investigation.
thank you, Madam President. I obviously can't
Yeah, you can't
comment
debate.
on that, but, you know, the minister must understand that the government's refusal to confirm or deny about this
Madam President,
ransomware
point of order.
would lead
point-
people
point of
to
order, Madam
infer that
President.
it must be.
There is a point of order. What is your point of order, Minister?
I've asked that you, Madam President, respectfully rule on the order, on the standing order that I've stated in regards to these questions, and I don't think it's appropriate in the standing orders of the Senate for the senator to decide that he would like to launch into a debate on this topic, which is extremely delicate at this stage, Madam President. I think it's out of order for him to do such at this time.
Senator DeCuto, the minister has indicated that this is an active investigation, and therefore the questions will not be. Senator DeCuto?
Thank you for your indulgence, Madam President. I would note that the first question refers to any attacks over the
Madam
prior
President,
3
he's going
years.
into the questions that I've respectfully asked that we go to standing order 65-4F, and he's now going to read out the questions.
No,
That's wholly inappropriate, Madam President.
I'd like to confirm the minister's view on the question, if I may just elaborate, and then he could confirm my understanding of what he's saying, Madam President. Would that be permissible?
Senator DeCuto, the minister has given an indication that this is covered under a standing order, and therefore we will have no further debate on or discussion.
So I'll assume that any hacks that may have happened in the past 3 years.
Point
are
of order,
still under
Madam
current
President.
Investigation.
Point of order, Madam President. Senator DeCuto is still pretty much reading the questions that the minister has said, but put in Senate Order 65F in place. I think we should move
Senators,
on, Madam President.
We will move on. There will be no further discussion on the question. Senators, you need to apprise yourself of these standing orders. When a standing order is highlighted, then we have to adhere to the standing order. We will now move on to the other set of questions that were presented to Senator Robinson to provide oral responses to parliamentary questions from Senator Tucker. And who is speaking
I'll
for?
respond to those, Madam President.
Minister, you can carry on.
Thank you, Madam President. And the first question from the opposition Senate leader, Senator Robin Tucker, was in regards to would the junior minister, and these were posed to my colleague, but I'm going to handle them, please inform the Senate as to what area or section within the Immigration Department is responsible for monitoring and investigating hotline complaints. The answer to that is the compliance section, Madam President. Question 2 asked, would the minister please inform the Senate as to how many justified and unjustified immigration complaints were received via the confidential immigration hotline for each year from 2019 to 2022. The Department of Immigration can only provide the number of complaints by totals and not by means in which they are reported, i.e. via the hotline. So the specific question that they're asked, the answer is unable to be provided. And question 3, would the minister please inform the Senate as to what is the general process and investigation time allocated for a matter if a complaint is made via the immigration hotline? The answer is once received, the immigration complaints are reviewed and the process is follows. Firstly, the complaints are reviewed to ensure that there is sufficient information to proceed. 2, if sufficient information is provided, a case is created in the compliance investigative matter system and later assigned to the senior immigration inspector for investigation. 3, once the investigation is complete, it is forwarded to the principal compliance officer for review, followed by a final review conducted by the compliance manager. Number 4, special circumstances often require that a complaint be forwarded to the minister for final decision. 5, in the event of a fine, the review process is escalated to the chief immigration officer, who has the authority under Section 71 of the BIPA 1956 to levy the requisite penalty. The time allocated to an investigation can vary depending on the nature and complexity of the complaint, available internal and external resources, and key persons who must be interviewed. The following list identifies the timelines that the Department of Immigration is currently guided by. An illegal worker, 6 to 9 months, an overstay, 1 month, regularization employment, 1 to 2 months. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Tucker, you've received the responses. Do you have any?
Yes, Madam President. May I ask that the minister, sorry,
So which?
I beg your
question?
pardon. Question. I have a question for question number 1 first.
You have a question
Yes,
for question number 1.
in
all right?
response to
In response
the
to that.
answer to
Yes,
question number
ask your
1.
question.
Can the minister tell us how many people, the total number of people that make up the compliance section, which is where he mentioned that's the group that's responsible for investigations. If he can tell us exactly how many people are in that section that are responsible specifically for monitoring and investigating complaints and things.
Madam President,
Minister.
I'm unable to provide those answers at this time.
Thank you. Senator Tucker, you have.
Yes, and my second question is in response to the response for question number 2, which is if the minister can clarify as to why he is unable to provide the numbers of justified and unjustified immigration complaints for the periods. It may just be that I just didn't understand what he said. It just wasn't clear to me. So if he can clarify that, I would be most grateful. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Opposition Leader.
Madam President, maybe the question was worded wrongly. It asks for the complaints justified and unjustified via the confidential immigration hotline. And the answer was that the Department of Immigration can only provide the number of complaints by totals. So they don't have a number that came in just via the hotline.
Senator Tucker.
Thank you, Madam President. Then if I may ask a second supplementary question,
Yes.
can the minister then tell us the total number of justified and unjustified immigration complaints received during those periods? Thank you, Madam President.
Minister.
I will definitely look into getting that answer, but at this time I cannot provide those answers.
Thank you. Senator Tucker.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Since the minister has indicated he will obtain those answers to those questions, and he will provide them at another date. That completes our question period. We will now move on to the orders of the day. And the first order of the day is the second reading of the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023. Senator O'Darrell, Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Sport, will present that bill. And
Madam President, I was trying to hold for 1 second
we will give you time.
to see if I can still close out the matter of the questions of the responses. I've just got indication that they're coming through. So if you just give me one
Yes.
moment to see if I can do this without holding up the proceedings any further. Madam
Minister-
President, I'd be grateful, and I'm sure that the opposition senators will welcome these responses in a timely manner.
They will give you time to present their responses then.
All right, Madam President, the answers are coming through, so I'm going to go through the questions as they were asked. And to Senator Tucker, I do apologize if the questions you asked are maybe a little out of order. I'm sure you will remind me as to exactly what you are asking in that. But the first question I have were in regards to what were the 3 breaches that were reported that were mentioned in the annual report. So the first one was that departments were asking for retroactive approval to waive the code. And that first breach is not allowed in accordance of 6.3 of the code. So that was one of the breaches. Second one is coming. I'll go back to the other breaches in a moment, but I think I have the question to your second question, which was what led to the reduction in the number of complaints, or what were the top 2 complaints? Of be honest, I wasn't quite sure which way you were asking the question. But the way we understood it is that there was complaints of the management of contracts and the in-tendering process. Those were the top two complaints that we saw. And as we see a reduction of those complaints, I can assume that those type of complaints have been reduced. Yeah, the departments were not managing their contracts in accordance with the code and financial instructions of the tendering process practices of Aquango. As far as the reorganization question, yeah, that can be viewed on the information sheets that can be found on gov.bm. And Madam President, I do apologize. I know that, you know, the responses may be a little broken, but I'm attempting the best I can to provide answers to the senators. If I get any further information, Madam President, I will properly furnish these answers to Senator Tucker, and I will state my apologies for not being able to give a wholesome response this morning.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. Senator Tucker.
Madam President, thank you. If I may, I would just like to, I believe that the minister answered all the questions, if I'm not mistaken, except my one last question, which is on the staffing number and the positions that they're looking to recruit. So if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the final question remaining outstanding. Thank you, Madam President.
That brings such
Ms. Tucker.
clarity to what I have in front of me. Thank you, Madam President. To answer that question, we are looking for 4 additional staff members, 2 senior managers and 2 officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. And Senator Tucker, I believe that satisfies the answer to your question.
Madam
you.
President, again, thank you for your understanding and patience as I
And
sort
Minister,
those
thank
out.
you very much for providing the answers to the questions that have been presented. Senators, I did indicate that we will be going on to the orders of the day, and that is the second reading of the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023, and that will be presented by Senator the Honorable Owen Darrell, Minister of Tourism and Culture and Sports. But before he presents, I would just like to acknowledge the following members who are here with us, and that is Marva Jean O'Brien, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, as well as Jane Brett, Policy Analyst from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, and Ms. Deborah Hunter, the CEO of the Bermuda Sport Anti-Doping Authority. Welcome to all 3 of you. And I now hand over to Minister Darrell to present.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, as the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, I am pleased to move the bill entitled the Anti-Doping Sport Act 2023. Madam President, this bill
Minister,
repeats.
you Standing Order 25, did you, maybe I've been listening too hard, but you need to present it on the Standing Order 25.
Madam President, I move that Standing Order 25 so I can proceed with the second reading.
Is there an objection to that motion? No objection. Carry on.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this bill repeals and replaces the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023. 2011. Madam President, the reason for the repeal and replacement is due to the considerable number of amendments that were required to update the 2011 Act and bring it into compliance with the World Anti-Doping Code, also known as WADA. Madam President, I remind honorable members in the Senate that the International Convention Against Doping in Sport of 2005 entered into force with respect in Bermuda on the 1st of June 2006. And in order to give effect to the convention and provide for the establishment of the Bermuda Sport Anti-Doping Authority, the 2011 legislation was enacted. Madam President, the Bermuda Sport Anti-Doping Authority, also known as BASADA, is the organization whose function is to prevent doping in sport. BASADA is a quango of the government, and the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Sport provides annual funds for its operation. Madam President, the World Anti-Doping Program has expanded significantly since the commencement of Bermuda's Anti-Doping Act in 2011. And the World Anti-Doping Code, which was never designed to be a static document, has been reviewed twice since then. The World Anti-Doping Code is a core document that provides the framework for anti-doping policies, rules, and regulations within the sport organizations and public authorities around the world. The World Anti-Doping Code works in conjunction with the World Anti-Doping Agency's 8 international standards and BASADA's anti-doping rules. Madam President, in 2022 to 2023, the World Anti-Doping Agency, or WADA, as currently known, embarked on a code compliance exercise globally, in which they assessed several jurisdictions. Bermuda's BASADA underwent a code compliance exercise in 2022 under the auspices of the WADA, and a considerable number of provisions to the 2011 Anti-Doping in Sport Act were identified as being non-compliant. I will say that again. A considerable number of provisions in the 2011 Anti-Doping Act were identified as being non-compliant. The report from WADA was provided in late December 2022. The then Ministry of Youth, Culture, and Sport, WADA, it was presented to the then Ministry of Youth, Culture, and Sport. WADA and BASADA agreed on a number of recommendations relating primarily to 2 factors: operational activities and the operational independence of the BASADA. And these were submitted to the ministry with a request for amendments to the 2011 Act. Madam President, many of the operational activities which are included within the 2011 Act are also addressed in the WADA Code, the WADA International Standards, as well as BASADA's rules. WADA does not require the Act to contain these operational provisions, and their continuing presence resulted in duplication, inconsistencies between the law and the rules of non-compliance. Madam President, operational independence refers to the requirement that a national anti-doping organization, and that is BASADA, must remain operationally independent from the sport and government in accordance with the code. Madam President, the anti-doping industry has experienced significant challenges to the integrity of its work in the last few years, and WADA is taking a very strong and substantial steps to ensure that all stakeholders operate in a compliant manner. Madam President, Bermuda has been deemed a clean jurisdiction since becoming a signatory to the convention, and we continue to enjoy the status today. Further, BASADA has never deemed non-compliant as a national anti-doping authority. In late December 2022, the ministry was informed of the comprehensive legislative changes that were required to come into scope with the Water Code. The Bermuda government was given 3 months to make landmark changes to an act that had not been amended since its inception in 2011. Madam President, at that time, Water's Compliance Review Committee accepted the comprehensive proposed changes could not occur in the 3-month time frame, and they were well aware that the Bermuda government continued to take the necessary steps to table the requisite legislation. Unfortunately, the timeframes of Water were not in synchrony, and the deadline for the Water executives could not be accommodated as Bermuda's legislature would not reconvene until the fall of 2023. Madam President, it should be highlighted that the ministry and parliamentary councils continue to work throughout the cyber attack that lasted for a month and a half in order to ensure that the drafting of this legislation was not interrupted. Madam President, with continued collaboration between the ministry and the Water CRC, the Water Compliance Review Committee revised its recommendation that Bermuda be placed on a watch list and awarded 4 months to implement the Water Code of legislation. Madam President, if this bill is passed today, we will be many months ahead of schedule. Madam President, it is important to note that Water had reviewed several drafts of the bill over many months in 2023 to ensure that Bermuda remained compliant. Water has confirmed that this bill is in compliance with the code. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Minister, for that comprehensive statement. So the One Bermuda Alliance obviously supports this legislation, and we have no problems with it. Our concerns are more along the lines of the journey to get here. So I acknowledge that the minister has taken time to answer those questions and that journey. I just have a few questions of just how many drafts of this particular legislation were done, and what exactly was the hold up as far as getting those drafts to where we are now. And also, if we were on the watch list and Water basically told us in advance, it seems as though it was still some sort of disconnect there as far as getting us to the end goal. So I want to also take the time to commend the civil servants who worked hard to get us here and to make sure that we are in line with international policy. And I also want to congratulate the minister here on the floor as well for ensuring that the flag did fly at the Pan Am Games. So with that, my comments, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other senator care to speak? John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. For starters, I'm fully supportive of the legislation. I must say, when I was reading through the prior act and the bill, I found it difficult to track all the changes, but certainly the brief just given by the minister was very helpful, as was the discussion had with Ms. Debbie Hunter Jones. She was very, very helpful in clarifying for me the need for the new legislation. So yes, I'm fully supportive of the legislation. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White. And Senate Vice President Karen Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I do understand that there's some urgency in passing this legislation, although I think I heard the minister correctly. It sounds as if we are a few months ahead of schedule. When I read this legislation, understanding the background to the need for it passing and seeing the importance of it passing for our athletes, I'm in support generally of this legislation, but I do have some concerns with Section 14. And those concerns with Section 14 in particular relate to the wholesale confidentiality of all of the functions and proceedings and documents of BASADA, which I can foresee will actually create some problems for BASADA itself in its functions, as well as going further than I would expect, given the current modern democratic trend to transparency within public authorities and quangos. So if it assists the minister, I can explain these concerns in a little bit more detail before I get to the question.
Certainly.
Thank you, Madam President. As currently drafted, Section 14 is a blanket provision which provides that all information, records, or documents relating to the functions of BASADA or the board are confidential. And if someone does not maintain that confidentiality, they commit a statutory offense unless that information is provided pursuant to an order of the court, to another employee or a committee of BASADA, or where disclosures are permitted under another act. What that means is that if BASADA today was to put its minutes of its proceedings like other equivalent authorities do, the UK authority, for example, publishes the minutes of all of its proceedings on its website. It publishes its accounts. It publishes other financial and ad hoc documents. Currently, if the BASADA was to do that, it would actually be committing a statutory offense, which I don't think is intended. The way that it would avoid committing that statutory offense is it could itself make a PATI request that it could publish this information on its website. But that does seem to be unnecessarily inefficient and convoluted, and I question whether it goes further, again, that is intended to protect confidential information. And I would note the minister in his comments reflected that the important factor here is that the country and BASADA comply with the code, the international code that applies in these circumstances, which itself makes provision for confidentiality, as I understand it. So I would recommend and ask, I suppose the question that I'm asking is it intended not to follow the modern approach for public access to information for statutory authorities? Are we intentionally not committing to transparency, accountability of the BASADA? I think the answer to that question is no, but I pose it as a question because that's what this Act currently does. If the intention is to continue as that organization currently does under the old Act, it has quite a considerable amount of its information made public. And I would pause here to say that's important for athletes, for example. And my understanding of the importance around confidentiality in particular, so far as anti-doping is concerned, is to protect the privacy of athletes. And I would observe that this legislation does do that. It allows for rules to be created by BASADA to protect the privacy of athletes. And that's consistent with legislation, for example, in New Zealand, which has very similar language. What you cannot find in, for example, other legislation like in New Zealand that I happen to look at is a similar confidentiality blanket provision, which would essentially make the functions, all the documents and information relating to the function of BASADA itself, confidential. And following on from that, I would note there is no whistleblower protection in the legislation. So if there is going to be a blanket confidentiality protection like this, there should be whistleblower protection specifically carved in, I would suggest. And is that intentional in this case? If not, my recommendation or suggestion or request would be to consult with the Information Commissioner's Office on how best to protect information that it is deemed in the public interest to maintain confidentiality, and how to best preserve the modern democratic approach to transparency and accountability in public authorities by making all information public that should be and can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Kieran Bell. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then we'll wait for the minister to obtain responses to the questions that have been asked.
Madam President.
Yes. Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, first of all, I want to thank the minister for bringing this bill forward. I want to thank the technical officers and the team for bringing this forward and to the Senate today. Madam President, this is important, and the athletes, this is something that the athletes needed to be done. To this anti-sport doping in Sports Act 2023 is an important act, and I thank the opposition for supporting this bill, as Senator Robinson said, and thank you to the technical team for pushing this through. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. Minister Darrell.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I also want to lend my support and, well, thanks to the athletes of Bermuda that are going and working hard to get themselves ready for international competitions. I thank the opposition senators for indicating their support for this, but I will get into some of the details of the questions that were asked by Senator Robinson. And the first of which is he asked how many drafts were done. I mean, I would go with the word several, but I don't think that that does justice as to how many times we went back and forth. And speaking along the lines of what Senator Simmons just said, in thanking the technical officers, there was times that I walked out of my office in the ministry, and many lawyers from our chambers were there going over this. And I will be honest with you, it became a quite daunting and frustrating task to go back and forth, because remember, we would submit this to our water, just so everybody could understand the process. We have a regional water team that we kind of discuss. And just to put it bluntly, and I'm very hesitant as to how I lay this out, but I'm sure you can work your way around what I'm saying here, is that when you are dealing with an organization as large as water, it has so much power and control over this area for good reason. You deal with the officers in your region who you're comfortable with, you have a relationship with. You would have known I would have met them for the first time in January at a water conference. But then their recommendations that they have been going back and forth with us have to then be passed to a different committee. And the unfortunate part is that committee does not have a relationship with us, and they do not see the amount of work and that Basara has been doing in order to come into compliance. And it was a shock even to the water regional directors when the recommendations came over from a meeting held in Shanghai after we had been told that it looks like our new legislation was going to be on par with what they asked for. So it was at that point that we had to go back, and this may speak to how many drafts. We literally had to go back and rip up the entire act and kind of redo it. And that's why what you have in front of you is a new act. It's not just amendments here and there. It's a whole new process because it was so much that we had to do. And I would say this, we are not alone in this. Maybe they got to us first, I'm not sure, but I have had many calls from counterparts in the Caribbean to ask, to share how they feel about the requests coming from water. And so I'm really happy that we were able to do it. I cannot give you a clear amount of how many drafts went back and forth. A lot of times, I mean, if you were to consider a draft would be a word has to be changed here, a line has to be taken out here, this person's name has to be switched with a different individual. It was a lot of moving parts on this, and it was a monthly and then became daily and even hourly back and forth with multiple ministries, right? The Ministry of then Youth, Culture, and Sports, and the Attorney General's chambers. I'm not sure about this watch list and the disconnect to us getting to the end goal. The end goal is that, you know, our athletes were able to compete in the Pan Am Games and the Parapan Games, and going forth in what is an Olympic year coming up. We're happy that we were able to get this all sorted in the name of the athletes, so there can be no clouds of remote suspicion around clean sport in Bermuda. Senator Bell, I must admit that your points are well noted, and I will ask that Basada, once this is passed, sit with the compliance and privacy officials and officers to take under advisement the confidentiality of the whistleblower protection and the recommendations that have been put on the floor today by Senator Bell, and we will, you know, meet in due course with the Information Commissioner's office to see if maybe once this is passed, further amendments down the road should be made to bring us into full compliance with privacy while still adhering to what water is looking for. And that's where the delicate balance, I will be honest, came with this. It's because even under a policy that we've talked about before, which is illicit drugs, you know, Basada in this 2011 Act had a whole illicit drug policy that was spoken about. WADA said that they will not sign off on any act that required an illicit drug policy. So what we've had to do is take that out completely and kind of make it a side document that Basada has, but it's not actually in the act. So we'll speak about that another day. But there's nuances like that that were very tricky for us to navigate around as far as what the government felt was sufficient oversight on certain areas, and water would not sign off on it. So in the interest of getting us to get our athletes to compete on the world stage, we had to make some tough decisions as to how we were going to still adhere to some policies that are required by the everyday Bermudians, while still putting or removing stuff in the act to make water compliance. And Basada will meet with the commissioner to determine whether additional amendments to the act need to be made. Madam President, with that, I'm not sure if there's anything further.
Just a moment. Yes, there's a question from Senator Tucker, opposition leader. Senator Tucker, you can put your question.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually have three questions.
Right.
I thank the minister for his response. For me, as my Senate colleague has already mentioned, you know, obviously we support the legislation.
Mhm.
For me, a concern that I have is when what appears to be administrative hoops that has led us to actually getting on a watch list. And so that, and of course, that watch list in my mind is representative of not only how Bermuda appears to the world, but also Bermuda's athletes potentially appear to the world, right? I mean, we've just come off the back of Flora Duffy, Connor White, you know, making marks in the sporting world. We have someone sitting in this room at this very moment who has made Mrs. Hunter, who has made her mark in international sports. And so being on the watch list is a significant personal concern of mine. And so I would like to sort of just understand a little bit more deeply, I guess, how we actually got there. So that's where my questions are coming from. So the first question I have is, if the minister can tell us what date did Bermuda actually request the extension to the 3 months that was given by WADA? The second question is, what date was given for the extension? So what was that deadline date? And then the third question is, when did WADA accept the final version of the legislation? And the reason I ask that question is because the minister has obviously been unable to tell us exactly how many drafts were submitted, which, given his explanation, certainly sounds a bit understandable. But I would like to know when WADA actually accepted the final version of the legislation, particularly given all of the back and forward that the minister has indicated that is going on. So those are my 3 questions. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
Thank you, Madam President. And while you would know that I love to get extremely political in this chamber, this is a topic that I will stay away from, making this political. And I'm disappointed that Senator Tucker is getting very close to that line as to turning this into a political matter and almost taking shots at public officers and those in administration.
Madam President, if I may, point of order, please. Because the minister is impeding improper motive. That is not what I'm doing. I did clearly indicate that my concern is around Bermuda being how we appear to the world, being on a watch list in the anti-doping arena. So I would appreciate if the minister would apologize, because that is impeding improper motive. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Tucker, you've posed 3 questions, and the minister can either respond to the questions or not. It's entirely up to him. So we will not have this back and forth. Minister, you can respond.
Thank you, Madam President. And we are about 5 minutes away from passing this legislation, which will put Bermuda athletes and reiterate to the world that Bermuda athletes are indeed clean athletes, and that Bermuda, under much advisement from a World Anti-Doping Organization, can do what's needed for their athletes. And I'm going to stay on that wicket, Madam President. I'll answer the questions as posed. But this is a good day for athletes in Bermuda. 2 athletes I did see yesterday evening. I did go down to the airport and welcome Connor White back. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we seem very, very concerned about athletes in this house, especially when it comes to this bill. But not one was at the airport with me when they returned. Not one, Madam President. But I'll move on to these questions. We were first notified of these the pending changes, as the statement said, in 2022. You would know that I went to a WADA meeting in January of 2023. Bermuda asked WADA for an extension in June of 2023. WADA did not give a date for the extension, and WADA accepted the final version of our legislation on the 5th of October. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister. And there are no other questions or concerns from the senators. You can move your bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to the second reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I now move that the bill entitled Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2023 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, ministers, and thank you, all senators, for passing this bill. And thank you, members, for your attendance. Moving on then, as we have indicated, that is the only item, the orders of the day for today. We will, item number 14, motions, there are none. Item number 15, congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Would any senator care to speak? Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Madam President, first I would like to give condolences to the Weeks family. Minister Weeks, his mom passed. She was a loving mother and took care of her family, her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she's going to be a huge miss. So condolences to Minister Weeks and his family on the passing of his mom, Miss Lorraine Weeks. Also, Madam President, I would like to give condolences to the family of Sasha Swan. Sasha was a mother of 4, and I had the pleasure of teaching 3 of her children, Satasia, Jericho, and Jordan. She died, passed away not too long ago, a couple of days ago. So condolences to the family and her partner, Clinton Otterbridge, as well, and their family and friends. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Ariana Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to pause to celebrate Ms. Toray Toll, who's just been announced as Bermuda's 2024 Rhodes Scholar recipient. If any of you have ever met Toray, you'll know that this is well deserved. And so I want to say congratulations. It was one of those programs I wish that I would have, applied for. And by the time I went to apply, I was too late. So I want to encourage other persons who are considering it to make sure that they know what's required so that they can take advantage of these types of opportunities. I also wanted to just stop and pause to celebrate Marsh McLennan because they made an announcement that there are 4 young Black Bermudians who will actually be pursuing some international opportunities within the company. And so I just think that's a great example of what, other companies can do to support Bermudians in their development. So those are my 2 bits today.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Tucker, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I will start with condolences. Sadly, I have a number of them. I would like to first associate myself with Senator Simmons's expression of condolence to Minister Weeks, his family, Joseph and Michelle, who are also Mrs. Weeks. Joseph is Minister Weeks's brother, and his wife Michelle, whom I both went to Warwick with, and I know, as well as Michael and Cindy. So I would like to associate myself with them, and as well as I would like to associate myself with the comments that Senator Simmons also gave in regard to Sasha Swan. I know Sasha from church, and also her family, her Stovall side of the family as well. Sasha's mother also recently passed away, and so again extend condolences on the passing of Beverly Davis, who, as I just mentioned, is Sasha's mother. So it's a very, very difficult time for the family at the moment. In addition, I would like to express condolences to the friends and family of Alex Cottingham, who was a chef at Mid-Ocean when I was there. Gruff personality. A lot of people, kind of stared away from him, but he really had a heart of gold. He really was. His exterior, his bark was worse than his bite. I would say that would be a good description of Alex. Then there are 3 other former Warwick SAC people who have passed away recently, all of which I do know, obviously, personally. Crystal Lightbourne, she has recently passed away. Condolences were expressed to her in another place last week. Monique Johansson, I apologies to her family and friends. I don't know what her marriage name is, but she passed away in October. Very good. She was a very good friend of mine. We've just lost contact over the years, but would certainly have chats and laughs when we did see each other, which wasn't very often. And then there is George Scott Smith. Many people will remember Scott as I know him. That's what he was always called in high school. Scott, very outspoken advocate, spoke on a number of issues that were happening in Bermuda. He relocated overseas, and as I mentioned, he has recently passed away. But Scott was known for his preaching, for his teaching, for his encouraging, and even while he was sick, Scott was still encouraging people. I mean, our class, our WorkSac class, have a group chat, and Scott was always on there putting, encouraging words out and voice notes and all of that stuff. So he will be a big miss. I just have 2 points of congratulations to Jessica Lewis, who has won a gold medal at the Para Pan Am Games held in Santiago, Chile. So extreme congratulations to her. I am sure that that the minister will add some additional comments on Jessica's success. And as well as I would like to extend congratulations to the nominees for the 2023 Bermuda Educators Network Outstanding Teacher of the Year Awards. There were 10 finalists recently announced. If I may, I'd like to just call their names because I think teaching is an absolute calling. I don't have the gifting for teaching, so I do admire those that do. So the 10 finalists were Shauna Mohammed from Southampton Preschool, Dion Tuzo from Northlands Primary, Aisha Vickers Brown from Paget Primary, Wayne De Silva from Whitney, Hewitt Taylor from Barclay, Michael Beckles, also from Barclay, Lugata, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, Lamb from Purvis, Makiba Stowe from East Dam Primary, Helen Painter from Whitney, and Richard Lindsay from Cedar Bridge. So I just want to say best of luck to everyone and congratulations on your nomination. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak on the congrats? Senator DeCouto?
Thank you,
Dr.
Madam
DeVito.
President. I'd like to associate myself with the senator's previous congratulations to Ms. Tull. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeCouto. No one else, and Minister, you have the floor.
Madam President, I'd first like to start with condolences to the family of Mr. Kevin Peets. He was laid to rest yesterday, and I was a classmate of his younger sister, Dr. Aisha Peets Tolbert. Also his other sibling, Miss Anisha Peets. His father, Mr. Kurt Peets, is a good friend of my parents, as well as condolences to his mom, his wife, and his 3 children, for their untimely loss. So I'd like condolences to be sent to his family, Madam President. Also, I want to be associated with the condolences of the passing of Miss Lois Weeks, the mother of Minister Michael Weeks. Miss Weeks, as most people would know, and went to Sunday school at St. Paul AME Church, was a long-serving usher at St. Paul AME. as well as a Sunday school teacher for many, many years at St. Paul AME Church. She happened to be my Sunday school teacher at one point in time. As many others in the community will have the experience of being in Mrs. Weeks' Sunday school class, as well as the Sunday school picnics, was always a feature over on Darrell's Island. She lived a full life, but even with that said, it's always hard when you lose someone, especially with Mr. Weeks' his mother. So I would like to be associated with the condolences to her entire family, not just Minister, on the loss of their mother, grandmother. Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move to congrats. And I'd like to touch on congrats from all three phases of my ministry this morning. And I'd like to start with congrats to the Bermuda Cricket Board. On Friday evening, the Bermuda Cricket Board held their yearly prize giving awards, and I was invited to attend. And I'm glad I went because the title of that was From Grassroots to the World Stage. And I mentioned at that time, Madam President, that, you know, I started playing cricket at Cleveland County from grassroots. And I was also a long way from home in Buenos Aires, Argentina, supporting our team on the world stage as well as at the national stadium. So cricket spans the entire spectrum. And shout out to a former student of mine, also very popular on the world stage of sport, Mr. Malachi Jones, who received the Icon Award. I'll also highlight another former student of mine, Mr. Derek Brangman, who, much to the delight of many people that were in attendance, received the MVP for the Premier League. Mr. Jamal Proctor, the up-and-coming young cricketer out of Somerset, who received the MVP for First Division. Coach of the Year, everyone would know Mr. Jeff Richardson. Congrats to him. Mr. Kamal Lavrock won the International Team MVP. And a Long Servants Award was given to Mr. Russell Richardson. And congrats to him for all the work that he has done in cricket. And I don't have everyone here, Madam President, but I want to say congratulations to everyone who was honored at that event on Friday evening, and to the Bermuda Cricket Board for taking time to recognize and honor all of their stars for this past year. Also, I was at the Bermuda International Airport yesterday evening to welcome back two of the participants of the Parapan Games. Miss, I'm gonna get her name right, Yushay De Silva Andrade, who got a silver medal in the sport of bocce, and Mr. Omar Hayward, who finished fourth in the sport of bocce. And I will also be at the airport. I hope to see others from across the aisle there as well, to welcome Miss Jessica Lewis home in December when she returns with her gold medal from the Parapan Games. And I want to be associated with the congrats that were put forward by the opposition Senate leader. And finally, to my third kind of piece of this puzzle, which is my ministry, I want to congratulate the Bermuda Tourism Authority for putting on the Bermuda Tourism Summit yesterday. I did get a chance to go. At the beginning, I went back around lunchtime and stayed for the entire day. So thank you for their team for putting on a series of workshops and panel discussions for stakeholders, talking about the entire ecosystem of tourism and how it benefits everyone. So I want to congratulate them. And one final one, Madam President, is from the Department of Culture, also under our ministry. And we want to congratulate the Friends of St. Peter's Church for getting their clock restored. And I know, you know, may she rest in peace, but a former senator who was once in his place would have been hugely excited to see the finished product of this. I'm excited because the Department of Culture provided a contribution of support through apprenticeship programs for Bermudians to become clock restorers. So I want to say thank you and congrats to the St. Peter's Church for getting their old clock finally restored. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Oh, I left
Sorry.
out one. Can I get one more?
Yes,
I want to
certainly.
do
you
an
may-
early congrats. I'm on across the aisle. Would love this one for Mr. Dorian Tucker, who is going to be putting on a workshop on December 2nd And I had the pleasure of listening to a piece of his presentation and the work that he has done and continues to do when it comes to developing leaders. So he's putting on a workshop for men, and I encourage as many as possible, if there is space available left, to attend the workshop that is tomorrow at the Chamber of Commerce building. And I want to congratulate all the work that he has done, is doing, and will continue to do in this very, very important part of community outreach. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister. Sorry.
Madam President, if I may, thank you to the minister for that shout out. I just want to say the workshop's on Saturday. Yes, sorry, you said tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction, Senator Tucker. I would just like to associate myself with the condolences then that have been expressed for Mrs. Lowe's Lorraine Weeks, and not only for the minister, Michael Weeks, but the entire family. And congratulations. Obviously, I will join with the congrats that have been expressed. I'm sure the entire Senate body would like to congratulate Jessica Lewis on her achievement. And so I would like to put that out there, that the entire Senate body really congratulates her on her achievement. And also congrats to all the athletes, and particularly Bermuda's cricket teams, as the minister has indicated. And finally, I know from when you talked about the clock in St. George's, and I think we all remember the senator who was in this chamber and who really spoke out very much for the East End. And it was quite an achievement to have the clock, which is, I've forgotten how many years it is old, but that was quite an achievement. And the fact that young people are now being trained to look after that clock going forward, I think speaks volumes for us in Bermuda, because of the age of Bermuda, number one, and the age of the St. George's Church, and which is a beacon for us in Bermuda and for the rest of the world. Anybody who comes, any visitor who comes here, they always go to St. Peter's Church. And so to know that time has been spent to restore that clock is wonderful news. With that said, now we'll move on. Item number 14. Sorry. No, we've reached adjournment. Minister, it's in your hands.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I do now ask that the Senate adjourn to Wednesday, December 13th.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. Would any senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Senator Dukutu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'm mindful of time, so I will make sure we can all get to lunch. The topic on my mind this week has been our people, Madam President, our people. I'd like to talk about that topic. So I appreciate your indulgence and the Chamber's indulgence. You know, often we use the word our. Who is we, Madam President? And often it can be us versus them, our group versus the other groups. Now, me and my colleagues in the One Bermuda Alliance, Madam President, we take the approach that us is a big group. It's a small island, but it's a big group, and it includes all of us together. And I think about the analogy of a ship, Madam President, or perhaps a smaller Bermuda sloop, where you have different people on the ship and they have different backgrounds and their different skills. But if not everybody can pull together, and if we don't take advantage of all the skills and backgrounds and unique characteristics of each person on that ship, the voyage won't be completed and the crew will be in danger. So I guess I'd like to encourage anyone listening to this to think about us in the broadest way possible on this small island. We have a decreasing population, and really we need to expand the concept of us to include as many people as possible who can contribute and bring their intellectual, social, emotional, financial capital to this island to help with our success. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't all celebrate the diversity and the tapestry of this country. We have a broad variety of cultural and social backgrounds on this country, Some of the stories of those backgrounds are obviously highly regrettable. We've had people who were brought here against their will. But we have people here from the Caribbean. We have people here who came from Africa. We have people here from Europe. We have people here from North America. We have people here from Asia. And anyone who's gone to have a curry or a roti, I think can appreciate the diverse impacts of that. And when we talk about Bermudian culture, we do need to take stock and recognize and celebrate all the components of that culture. And I think it would be incumbent on all of us to take time to make sure we appreciate the wide varieties of that culture that we may not have appreciated. And one thing I'm personally thankful for is that I've been able to gain an appreciation of things that historically I might not have gained an appreciation for. But that doesn't mean I put aside my own personal cultures. And it doesn't mean I stop there. I go wider. Perhaps one day I can better understand the contributions of the Filipino culture to Bermuda. As today we talk about Portuguese Bermudians, I have no doubt, in fact, we probably already should be talking about Filipino Bermudians, to provide an example. So I'm going back to this concept of us and our people. And I would urge anybody listening to take the broadest view possible of what our means, because we all have to work together. You know, in insurance, we talk about, oh, you only want to pick good insurance risks. And the danger of that is you can shrink to greatness, as we would say. A very small business of very good risks. And then you go out of business because you're not making enough money. And that's a little bit what might be happening on this island if we're not careful. We can't shrink to greatness by turning people away or gatekeeping, Madam President. We talk about us and them. That's a form of gatekeeping. And recognize that there are many ways to be Bermudian, many ways to exemplify the Bermudian culture. And everyone has their own comfort zone. So I know for some people, the comfort zone might be a sports club, a boat club, a quiet morning on the porch, a long day fishing, perhaps with a friend or perhaps alone. A long day at a cricket game full of noise and color and activity. A long day in quiet contemplation at a church. So we know that there are many ways that we as Bermudians and residents of Bermuda can enjoy our country, our culture, and each other's company. So I urge everybody to take the most inclusive way of thinking about that. And I think I'll probably close with one comment. There's a book called Improv that I read once. And the thing I remember about that, you know, improv is the art of how do you keep the conversation going, Madam President, and in a constructive way. And there's, you know, you can be talking to somebody. The key you can do in improv is you say, someone says something, you may not really understand it, but the challenge to you to keep that conversation going, to get the best result, is you say yes and pick it up and move with it. And what can you add to it? Keep that conversation alive and flowing, even if it was out of your comfort zone or different for you, different from your history. What can you learn from that? Because a natural tendency is people say, no, but. So we can't be shutting down and we can't be closed-minded about what it means to be us. This country's too small for that, Madam President, and we need to appreciate the full tapestry. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeCuto. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief. Earlier today, we had received an announcement on the Bermuda Health Council annual report for the year ends 2022 and 2021. And as we all know, the Health Council provides a very important governing role in Bermuda. And just in reviewing the annual report, I noticed that the largest source of revenues comes from the Mutual Reinsurance Fund, which, as many would know, is a prescribed sum of $1 per month per insured person that helps to fund our health services. And in reviewing the financial statements, it indicated that we expect to receive from that fund about $1.5 million a year to fund the Health Council. And in the 2022 year, as in the 2021 and 2020 years, we received roughly a third or about $500,000. So about $1 million shortfall in 3 straight years. So I guess, my concern really is that with the Health Council being such an important body for us, that it continues to achieve its successes through proper funding. And certainly there's a significant shortfall both in the 2022 year and 2021 and 2020 based on the information included in the annual report that was tabled today. So that's my sort of comment, concern, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator John White. Would any other senator care to speak? Hearing none, then senators, the Senate stands adjourned until December the 13th. Be well. Senate is adjourned.